If we compare India to Pakistan, people will say go pick on someone your own size. Indians like to compare India with China in terms of business opportunity or stock markets or whatever else. But let's be practical. China is 6 times our size in terms of GDP. So it's wishful thinking comparing ourselves with them. But things are changing. For instance, no longer is China the fastest growing major economy in the world. India is. No longer is China the hottest investment destination. India is. And no longer is China the best place to set up a factory. Vietnam is. So, join me for today's video where I take you through how China's decline provides a massive opportunity for every other Asian country to capitalize on, and what Vietnam have got right, and what India needs to get right for us to transform ourselves into a manufacturing powerhouse. And guys, if you enjoy such videos, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more such financial content. I don't need to remind you, China is the world's factory. China liberalized its economy way back in 1978. A series of market-oriented reforms transformed that country from one of the world's poorest nations into the second biggest economy. China had the tag of the world's fastest growing major economy for nearly 30 years. The result of this was that they created a massive ecosystem around manufacturing and poured trillions of dollars into infrastructure. And this growth made them a consumption-based economy. But keeping infrastructure and consumption aside, their manufacturing prowess can be seen from the fact that they contribute 28.4% to the world's manufacturing output, the most by far. Their main exports comprise textiles, electronics, and garments. But they didn't come all this way by chance. There's a reason why China succeeded. They built a strong business ecosystem. Low taxes and duties have helped, some very efficient government policies, and in true Chinese fashion, lack of regulatory compliance made it easy doing business there. They're very lax in terms of child labor, health and safety norms, wage laws, environmental laws, and also some good old currency manipulation has made their exports very competitive on the world stage. So all this has helped them set up the world's biggest factories, and every multinational company you can think of manufactures any and every product over there, from Apple to Nike to Tesla. But I'm here to tell you this, the party has come to an end, and China began slowing down since 2016. And ever since COVID in 2019, the Chinese government has been scoring self-goals by enforcing draconian lockdowns. Big companies are fed up. The most recent example being when a strict lockdown in one Chinese city forced a shutdown of the world's largest iPhone factory, which makes more than 10% of all iPhones worldwide. China has also made an enemy out of America and its European allies, which started with Donald Trump's trade war in 2018 and escalated with its clampdown on Hong Kong and Taiwan. And now most recently, America is doing everything in its power to restrict China from gaining access to the latest technology, which will hamper many Chinese industries. The China plus one strategy, where multinationals are looking away from China, is in full swing. I want to tell you, China manufactures so many products, and there are so many ways this giant can bleed. For example, Malaysia and Bangladesh have stolen apparel manufacturing away from China. Taiwan has taken away some of their metal manufacturing business from them. And Vietnam is stealing their consumer goods business, which includes furniture, footwear, travel goods, handbags, etc. But I want to bring your attention to one very prestigious item where India too can benefit at China's expense. iPhones, a whole lot of them. But we have to compete with Vietnam for that. See, India currently manufactures around 5% of Apple's total iPhones. But we have an ambitious target to take that tally to 20% by 2026. To do this, and to further encourage Apple to manufacture other products here, such as iPads and AirPods, and in addition get other biggies like Samsung to set up shop in India, we need to get a lot of things right. Just like Vietnam. Vietnam has a lot going for it. Firstly, it's very close to China geographically, which makes it easy for companies to move out of China and into Vietnam. They also have a very similar infrastructure and supply chain like China. So companies like this familiarity factor. Also, Vietnam is a socialist country with one party rule. So laws can be passed with ease and decisions can be taken quickly without any opposition. But Vietnam has got so many other things right as well. They identified long ago that exports will be the main reason for their growth. And exports have indeed been the main reason why so many people have been employed in that country. Here's a comparison for you. And just so we compare when the situation was normal, I've taken figures before COVID began in 2019. India had exports of $220 billion in 2010, which grew to around $323 billion in 2019. Vietnam, on the other hand, had exports of just $72 billion in 2010, which grew exponentially to touch $319 billion in 2019. That's almost equal to India. Vietnam offers a friendly environment for business. They have reduced taxes for foreign companies. This compared with examples where India has in the past taxed foreign multinationals like Vodafone and Kane Energy retrospectively. Vietnam have also very smartly entered into many free trade agreements or FTAs with 56 other countries, where they make import and exports of goods with them very simple and almost tax-free. The FTA with European Union comes to mind, where big European firms are allowed to make investment into Vietnam and export their goods further to other countries. And in return, European Union has lifted tariffs on 85% of Vietnamese goods. India too has begun to actively explore FTAs with many countries, Australia and UK being the most recent, but missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime when we backed out of the massive China-led Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or RCEP. Other than this, Vietnam has much more flexible labor laws. They don't restrict Chinese companies from operating within their borders. Their currency doesn't fluctuate much against the US dollar, unlike India's, which does. And government policies are stable and conducive to business, especially manufacturing and exports. But one of the most important factors where Vietnam is ahead of India is transportation infrastructure. What this means is that Vietnam has utilized their coastline very well, in the sense that it takes less than half a day on average to transport any items from a port to the factory. Their transport network includes roads and is much better than ours. In India, it takes 7 to 10 days on average for materials to get transported from ports to the factory because of our shoddy infrastructure. Of course, people like Mr. Gautam Adani, who owns India's largest port, and our Transport Minister Mr. Nitin Gadkari realize this problem and are working towards it. But for now, Vietnam is way ahead. So, let's take a look at what Vietnam has accomplished in the electronic manufacturing arena. Google is shifting assembly of its Pixel 7 mobile phones from China to Vietnam. Chinese mobile phone maker Xiaomi is contract manufacturing phones in Vietnam for export to Thailand and Malaysia. Microsoft is manufacturing Xbox consoles. Amazon, Dell, Foxconn, Wistron have all set up shop in Vietnam for manufacturing a host of products, from laptops to PCs to tablets to many other electronic items. But the crown jewel for Vietnam, its claim to fame if you will, is how it managed to woo Samsung. Since 2008, Samsung has invested a staggering $19 billion in the country, shifting its mobile manufacturing capacity away from China to Vietnam. It recently announced a $3.3 billion investment for semiconductors as well. As much as 50% of its phones are made in Vietnam, and its exports in 2021 was $65 billion, which is 3 times what Apple has promised to manufacture in India by 2026. India, on the other hand, is mainly using the production linked incentive or the PLI scheme, where we are paying incentives to companies to manufacture in India if they fulfill certain targets. And for electronics manufacturing, we have earmarked a very large sum of money to give as incentives, 41,000 crores to be precise. Firstly, let me tell you our biggest problem. Since we distrust the Chinese so much, our foreign direct investment or FDI rules don't allow Chinese companies to do business in India. And most of Apple's vendors, which are now in China, are Chinese companies, which need to shift its base to India if we want higher value addition of Apple's products to be made in India. Another problem is foreign companies get scared of Indian laws. Our revenue department is notorious for raising arbitrary demands based on different interpretations of laws and wrong classification of items. We need a system where foreign companies can consult with our authorities in advance and come to an agreement so they feel comfortable. Also, our export policies need to be consistent and not change so frequently. But all in all, India has improved over the years, and we do have something to show for it. Production of mobile phones have increased from 6 crore units in 2014-15 to 31 crore units in 2021-22. In just 8 months of the current financial year, which is from April to November of 2022, exports of smartphones crossed the 50,000 crore mark, which is 110% higher compared to the same period last year and higher than the 45,000 crores for the whole of last year. Oh, and by the way, 40% of this were iPhones and a good portion were from Samsung as well. Apple's 3 biggest contract manufacturers, Foxconn, Pegatron and Wistron, all of them have set up factories in India. In fact, Foxconn just a few days ago became the first global company to receive incentives under the PLI scheme, getting 357 crores. Foxconn is also looking to quadruple its workforce at its iPhone factory in Chennai over the next 2 years and is looking to hire 53,000 more workers. At the same time, the Tata Group is in talks with Wistron to buy out its manufacturing facility in Karnataka. India has also been making multiple exemptions for Apple in its manufacturing policies and will even specifically allow Chinese Apple iPhone makers to set up factories in India on a case-to-case basis, thereby exempting them from the stringent FDI policy. But the challenge is for India to encourage these companies to scale up their production over here. And for that incremental business, we have to fight Vietnam. India has certain advantages over Vietnam as well. We have a young population, we have cheaper skilled labor than Vietnam, and we have a large domestic market. And our government too has woken up to all these opportunities over the last few years. It's just that when China bleeds in the electronics manufacturing arena, India should be the number one choice where multinationals look to as a substitute. Apple should be our case study where we learn how to encourage companies to come make in India. And while Vietnam may have a head start on us, we're certainly not too far behind. Thank you.
Hi, you have been watching our videos on HW News English. But why be content with content in just one language when you can choose from both? Yes, from 1st of January, we are bringing together the repository of our ground reports, interviews and analysis under the umbrella of HW News Network. So, while HW News English will stay as it is, you will now be able to watch our Hindi and English reportage together. So don't forget to watch HW News Network from 1st of January.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.